In the Gospel of Mark, we learn about a series of events between Jesus and his disciples. They left that place and passed through Galilee. Jesus did not want anyone to know where they were because he was teaching his disciples. He said to them, "The Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men. They will kill him, and after 3 days he will rise." But they did not understand what he meant and were afraid to ask him about it. They came to Capernaum. When he was in the house, he asked them, "What were you arguing about on the road?" But they kept quiet, because on the way they had argued about who was the greatest. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, "Anyone who wants to be first must be the very last and the servant of all." He took a little child whom he placed among them. Taking the child in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me." That conversation on the road, there was one who was missing from the conversation. Now, my assumption is the conversation would have been very different if Jesus was there. In fact, it probably wouldn't have happened. But it did happen, and Jesus knew exactly what they had said, though he wasn't there. In our day, that happens with secret recordings. Secret recordings intended to shame or to gain leverage over another person. There's a fascination with what's going on in someone's mind. And if you can get what they have to say in private, then you get a little bit of a peek. Well, Jesus knew exactly what had been said in private. But in that case, it wasn't just in their minds. No, it had come out from their lips. The fact is that Jesus could have known what was even in their hearts before the words came out. And the fact that they ended up speaking the words might distract us a little bit from the lesson that Jesus intended. We might presume that, okay, so I shouldn't boast when there are other people around. I don't want to make anyone feel bad. I'll keep it to myself. Well, the fact is that Jesus' ability to know what they were saying, even though, as far as we can tell, the natural earshot was not what made it possible for him to know this, shows that words do not have to hit Jesus' ears audibly for him to know them. In other words, the thoughts that we have in our minds are very much an issue, even if they have not turned into words. So, how do you feel about yourself? Is your goal in life to gain more honor than someone else? Is your goal in life to get a particular position that someone else has but you want? Is your goal in life for people to like you? So you're a funny guy and you really do it because you want people to think that you are a funny guy and they'll look up to you and honor you. Or when you're doing your work, your interest is in having other people compliment you and commend you. Instead of recognizing that it is God who gave you the ability to do it, you're not so much thinking about that, which then could put God in the position of needing to ask you a question. What were you talking about along the road? What is it that you are thinking in your head? If the question comes our way and we don't want to answer it because we're embarrassed about what might come out, we're ashamed of what we've been thinking, then Jesus just keeps on talking to us. And what does he say? He says, if you want to be first, and like that in itself is kind of a surprise. Like it seems like he's allowing for the possibility that wanting to be first could actually be okay. Like, isn't that the problem? Isn't it a problem that I want to be first? Not necessarily. Not inevitably. There is absolutely nothing wrong with a Christian eager to be the very best follower of Jesus that he can be. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you seeking to maximize your gifts so that you can be a servant to as many people as possible. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you being passionately committed to figuring out how you can be a blessing. There is nothing wrong with being passionately committed to being the best. Of course, what matters is how we define the best. And Jesus says, to be the best, be the very last. Be the least. And don't just be thinking, well, if I'm put in that position, all right, then I'll be willing to do it. No, God wants us to be the very last right now, that I'm seeing myself as the least among all of the inhabitants of this world, that I am seeing myself as a servant to every other human being that exists. That I wake up in the morning and I ask, how can I be a blessing to other people around me? I wake up in the morning and say, is there something nice that I can do for someone else? That I wake up in the morning and I say, so how can the things that I'm doing be a gift to someone else? Well, that is not what the disciples were talking about when they were speaking on the road. And when Jesus asks them, so what were you talking about? Well, they didn't really want to say. So Jesus just keeps on talking. And as he is speaking, they are hearing all of, his reaction is pinpointing exactly the sorts of things that they had a problem with. They were hearing their sin come back at them about how they were looking to get honor for themselves by putting someone else down, how they were envious of the fact that there actually was another human being who was maybe better than they were in 1 or 5 ways. And yet Jesus just so patiently presents the beautiful way. He's so gentle and kind to the disciples. He's so willing to gently approach a challenging issue where they were weak. It's not that there wasn't something about what they had done that was absolutely wrong. But Jesus makes it clear that he's going to talk about that in the context of love. He graciously speaks to them, grace that was a reality because of something that he had just told them, that he was going to give them an example of what it means to be the very best. He said, they will kill me. Here we have the servant of the world, God himself, being willing to suffer to be a servant for everyone. We have the one who was the very best, becoming the very least, as he took all of this competitiveness inside of ourselves where we're looking to put other people down, and suffered in himself that hot, staring glare of an angry father. In him, so not in us. That he could paint for his dear friends a beautiful path, a forgiven path forward. That he could, with joy, invite them to take on the privilege of being a servant. What's crazy is when you see life through the eyes of a servant, suddenly nothing is at stake anymore. If you lose everything, what less can I have if I'm already a servant of all? If I'm tempted to think of what people think of me as an individual, well, individual doesn't mean anything to me when I'm all about serving other people. If I find out that someone else is getting an honor that I don't get, I have no reason to be concerned. Whatever new position that person might have, in no way changes my job description. I was a servant before, and I'm still that person's servant. There's nothing more freeing than to see that you are a servant to all. I mean, we torture ourselves by going through our lives manipulating and maneuvering and trying to gain a position so that we can become something, so that we can be recognized as something. There is no something to become. You already are everything that you can be. You are a servant.